Hey friends, good evening. Cloud Bart here. Woo, just kind of getting started with a little live stream recap. I just popped out of the CBT Nuggets study group, our AWS learner study group. Had a great session with a bunch of the learners. It was a good time. You may notice that I am up in the loft this evening. I did move up out of the bottom of the yurt up into the upstairs here. When it starts getting colder this time of year, it's a lot easier for me to heat the top of the yurt than it is to try to be down in the main part of it. What can I say? Not exactly a technology problem. It's something I have to deal with recording and living and working in the yurt like this. But hey, I love it. It's part of the setup for me here at Cloud Bart Studios, which is the unofficial name that we've dubbed this corner of Western North Carolina. So getting back to the study group tonight, it was a great session. We had a lot of interesting new things starting to show up. One of the big things I keep seeing is a lot of what are called, I call them AWS curious individuals who are joining up. And these are folks that are elsewhere in the CBT learner catalog. They're in the networking side, maybe they're in VMware, they're in Microsoft, and they're coming to hear, first of all, ask some questions about AWS. And that part I absolutely love because probably the best questions you get to answer are the ones from beginners or people who are really just beginning to get into or aspiring to start learning some sort of new technology. So I love working with those sorts of people. It was great to have some of our learners join us up. And somebody from VMware tonight, really interesting conversations with them as well. One of our other learners came in and was chatting a little bit about their experiences on the SysOps exam recently. And this is great stuff. This is exactly what these study groups are all about. It gives us a chance to hear what our peers are experiencing, hear them talk about whether or not the training material was effective. Did it get them this far? Did it get them that far? Were they able to just have a home run on the exam? And if it turned out to be a bit more of a learning experience for them, then what could they maybe go back and rehash and study more on their own outside of where they are? So one of the big things that we heard a lot of people talking about was, again, the importance of identity and access management. It's such a critical service within AWS. And one of our learners was really kind of echoing that tonight. So great to hear that. It's not just me telling everybody that you should learn IAM. It is one of the services that's on all the AWS exams. So really important. The other one that came up tonight was a lot of people asking about networking. And it was interesting because we were in a discussion about Lambda. Tonight's group was really supposed to be about Lambda, but the conversation kind of went off in other directions. And I don't mind that. I think that's a great thing. I try to keep those study groups organic so that people can ask questions and move in whatever direction we need to. Heck, just a couple of weeks ago, I overhauled our study group completely. We were going to go over DynamoDB, and one of our learners was preparing for an exam. So we just did live Q&A. And I think that's one of the things that I always go for. Hey, friends, good evening. I see a couple people popping in there. That's one of the things that I always try to get into. I wasn't a video-based trainer. I didn't get my certifications by watching online training videos. I spent most of my time working in the industry and working through networking, automation, and virtualization. So those three technologies are what prepared me for AWS certification more than anything. Once I got to actually doing the exams, it was a question of understanding what the objectives were for the test and applying the knowledge that I had already. So when I hear people trying to do completely video-based training, I'm always like, my heart goes out to them because that's a journey that's driven by you. And that's one of the reasons why I like working with CBT and helping bring a lot of energy to the experience. So I really want to just kind of impress upon people this notion that I am here. Like I'm sitting here in the Slack channels every day, ready to talk to people. And so if you're out there watching training videos, you're watching them on YouTube, you're watching them on some of the other great training providers that are out there, ask yourself how easy it is to find somebody to ask a question. Heck, I would rather you have just come and talk to me, even if you're with a different training provider. I'm okay with that. I just want to help learners out, keep people enthusiastic about cloud computing and learning, and be a service for people. So if there's anything I can do to help you out, please reach out to me. I want to make that the distinguishing thing behind this story. And kind of the last thing that I wanted to kind of recap tonight in this little stream. Hold on, I got a little friend there. What's going on? Hello. Good evening. Yeah, so one of the last things I wanted to talk about here is just a little bit about why someone like myself came to CBT Nuggets. Okay, because a few years ago, I was a trainer. I worked for Global Knowledge, but only really as a contractor. So I was working for Bart, working as a contract trainer and a consultant for my own IT consulting business. So spending a lot of time traveling, meaning a lot of big businesses, working with Discover, working with Visa, working with really big organizations that are out there, people that are much larger than a lot of the companies that I would run into here in Asheville. And so I had a lot of options. And what I was really kind of looking to do was I wanted to find an organization that would help my efforts go farther than just my immediate classes that I was teaching. Like, I loved working with students and I loved teaching the information, but I wanted to work with an organization that was pushing our weight even farther than that. And so when CBT Nuggets found me on LinkedIn and approached me about the opportunity to come and be a part of the team, the questions I had were largely around what makes you guys different from these other training providers. I've talked to O'Reilly, I've talked to Linux Academy, I've talked to A Cloud Guru, I've talked to all these different organizations on LinkedIn with their hiring staff, and they were good. They're fine. They're solid offerings. But there was something about CBT, like the way that it came out, the person that was reaching out to me, the mannerism, the interaction from the get-go was unlike any other type of organization I'd ever worked with. And so when I actually got a chance to start working with them, and they asked me, how do I want to do my training? Light bulbs were going off. I was like, well, that's refreshing. They want to know what I would do. How would I present this? So these are some of the reasons why I ended up picking CBT Nuggets as the choice for me to go from being a consultant and a contractor into being a full-time trainer making online training videos. I needed an organization that was really going to help us do something strong. And CBT Nuggets does that. The learner-first mentality that they have there blows my mind. The fact that they want me here streaming, chatting with you guys, those are important things to them. That's really important to me. So I saw a question come in. I just got my cloud practitioner. Rock and roll sounds good, but that's the only cert I have. Not sure what to do to land the first job, get the A+ or go for solutions architect. I'm addicting to learning AWS. Love it. So what I usually tell people is to remember that cloud computing is not a slice of IT. It's the whole stinking pie. So when we talk about getting a job with any cloud computing vendor, whether it be AWS or Azure or Google Cloud or Alibaba or Oracle, okay, or VMware, you have to ask yourself, what types of workloads, what types of businesses do I want to support and run within AWS? And so that's what I would kind of ask yourself next. You said you love learning AWS, and I love it too. But one of the things that I love is that I get to talk about data analytics, I get to talk about databases, streaming applications, events, security, threat modeling, log analysis. But I didn't do all of those things to begin with. So what I try to get people to think about next is, what is next to cloud computing that you would like the most? Do you want to work on the network part? Do you want to run? Do you want to work and support developers? Do you want to manage life cycles? Is it about the operation side of it? Okay, so that's what I would answer on that particular question. I would say, what sort of job do I envision having in the AWS space? And typically what I tell people to go to next is either decide between something that's in a developer world, whether that be supporting, whether it be testing, or whether that being actually writing the code. Okay, or if you're going to be like an operations person where you want to run and maintain the systems, you are more concerned about operating systems and monitoring, security postures, optimization. That's going to put you more into like the SysOps and architecting world. But in all of those places, you're still going to want to understand client server applications. So A+ is a great fit. It really kind of depends on how comfortable you are with computer hardware to begin with. A+ will help you in cloud, but it's really more of a gateway certification. So if you're looking for entry-level jobs, help desk positions, or apprenticeships, then that's going to be a great one. I also would really consider the Net Plus, almost possibly over top of that, depending on how you feel about hardware. Okay. The next thing I would consider then is one of the major operating systems. I would consider, am I interested in running Microsoft? Do I want to get certified in that? Am I interested in managing or working with Linux systems? For me, it was all about that Linux stuff. As soon as I got into running systems and working in a development environment, I was hooked on Linux like crazy, like sugar. So my journey through AWS has largely been a big journey through Linux as well. So I try to encourage people to think about those auxiliary pieces on the side. So A plus would be a great fit. The Linux Plus or Linux Essentials or the Linux Foundation certs are great places as well. We have certification material for all of that within the CBT Nuggets catalog. So I usually try to encourage people to think about what part of the cloud computing experience they're enjoying the most. And I like all of the different facets. And Linux has been absolutely one of the skills that has helped me the most. So I really encourage people to look at that. And maybe kind of my last thing to kind of go on tonight is that just recently I had someone here in Asheville hit me up that was asking about their AWS certification track, very much like what you just asked about. And I asked him a few questions along these lines. He was like, I want to get into AWS because I think it's a cool vendor. Seems like a great space. I'm kind of a Microsoft.NET developer. So that right there was like, whoa, hold on a sec. So you have a Microsoft background, but you want to get into AWS first. And I said, that's great. That's great. I love AWS too, but I'm also a big Azure fan. So I encourage people to be careful about where they're going. He wanted to get into AWS because he felt like it was the best vendor. Now that's an awkward situation. I tried to encourage him to take a step back and say, how about you consider which vendor certification is going to get you in your social, economic, geographic position that you want to be in? And then use that as the deciding factor. So if there's a job here in Asheville that you're trying to get and they want you to be AWS certified, absolutely, you should do it. And you should be able to take your Microsoft experience and apply it in some way to that. Okay? But at the same time, if you're considering getting into it and there's no real reason for you to pursue that, it becomes a bit of I guess just a mental misalignment there. You have this objectivelessness kind of goal in mind where you're not sure where exactly you're going. So I tried to encourage him to take a step back and consider before he goes too far down the AWS path, whether or not he should maybe be getting into Azure. Because in the end, if you're going to get into cloud, you'll probably end up touching more than one cloud vendor. And there's time to multi-cloud certify over time. So I should go for like A plus Network Plus before getting in the Solutions Architect cert. Yeah, I tell you, man, I really would pick, if you're feeling interested in learning Linux at all, I would jump right into that. You are going to get exposed to hardware, compute resources. You're going to get exposed to networking. Linux will help guide you through all of those pieces. Beyond that, I would pick the Net Plus over the A Plus just because I think networking is that much more important than the underlying compute and software pieces that A Plus gives you. That's my gut feeling for it. But again, it kind of depends on where you're coming from. If you've built PCs over the years, or maybe you're into gaming or modding or anything like that, you probably have a pretty good breadth of hardware understanding already. So there may be some duplication. But then again, it could be an easy one to kind of knock out. So you got to kind of do a little bit of that assessment. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And, again, everything in those casinos, they're all network attached devices. So I really would jump into networking as quick as possible, especially depending on how you feel about it. Yeah, I really cannot stress enough the importance of the networking background. Networking and Linux, those are the two biggest things that I've used the most in my career. And they were things that I didn't originally go to school for necessarily. I got an associate's degree in network technology. But at the time, that was just like LAN WAN switching. It didn't really go into some of the enterprise grade networking stuff that I would get myself into in voice over IP and quality of service. That stuff came later on, and Linux came right along with it. So I hope that helps you out there. If you have more questions, please hit me up. You can find me on Twitter out there. It's @CloudBart. I think we might be followers already in chat on there. I seem to remember. Yeah, absolutely, dude. And that is really valuable for me and for a lot of folks out there. So yeah, hit me up. I want to be accessible. And for those of you who happen to be watching this later on, you can find me out there at cbtnugget.com, along with the rest of the CBT Nuggets team. We have a lot of great free content coming up. I'm about to refresh the entire CBT Nuggets AWS catalog with my own colorful anecdotes and dinosaur art and ridiculous training. So I hope you guys will come and check that out if you happen to be coming back and watching it later on. And beyond that, look for me in another study group. I will be at reInvent here in a couple of weeks. So if anybody's going to be joining out there, look for me. I'll be one of the guys with the silly hat on. I don't know if there's that many of us there at reInvent. There were a few fairly dapper cowboy dudes last year. So if you see me out there, say, hey, I'd love to catch some selfies, and I will be doing some live streaming events from there to provide coverage as well. So I hope everybody had a great evening, and we'll chat at you here in the future. Abim, I'm not sure exactly what your total name is. I appreciate you hanging out, buddy. Yeah, that networking is going to be a crucial part of it. Cool. Awesome. Well, everybody have a great evening, and I will see you guys out there in the cloud.